Medicaid in Idaho is being interrogated. Serious questions about future funding are being asked during a required 5-year review, and we're going to hear some of those answers. Bowling alleys, blockbusters, and even betting machines could soon be coming closer to home, mountain home that is, and the Shoshone-Bannock Tribes are betting they can hit the jackpot in Elmore County. The hole, the pit, unfulfilled promises, whatever you once called it, the corner of 8th and Main was also once known as the Eastman. That was until 36 years ago today. 5 years ago, Idaho voters approved expanding Medicaid for Idahoans that made too much money to qualify for standard Medicaid, but not quite enough money to get help on Idaho's healthcare exchange. In that bill was a requirement for a 5-year assessment of what the program has done so far, which is where we are now. This week, both the House and Senate Health and Welfare Committees are asking questions of the fine folks who work at Idaho's Health and Welfare Department. Things like how much money, how many people involved, and those answers will help lawmakers make recommendations about what to do with Medicaid expansion for the future. Joe Paris is following the hearings, the conversations, and the questions that are being asked on Medicaid today. Joe, what seems to be like the major question right now that lawmakers are wanting to know?
Well, Brian, the cost and performance of Medicaid expansion is really what this is all about, this conversation. We've heard in recent months and weeks from lawmakers who have expressed concerns about the overall cost of Medicaid expansion and the amount of money going into it from the state and the federal government. Now, this week, Juliette Sharon, the Medicaid Division Administrator with the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, she is presenting information and answering questions from lawmakers, and she acknowledged that, yes, Medicaid expansion is costing more than originally projected in 2018, and a major factor into the cost of expanded Medicaid is a federal rule throughout the COVID pandemic that kept people enrolled on Medicaid even if they may have lost eligibility. But soon, on February 1st, here in basically in a week, Idaho will be able to reevaluate the Medicaid rolls and begin purging some people who are no longer eligible for expanded Medicaid. And the expanded Medicaid group that could be removed is approximately 67,000 people, according to the Department of Health and Welfare. Now, the expanded group sits at about 145,000 right now, so that's 67,000 people. It's about half. It's a good chunk of the people that could be removed from the program, and that would bring down costs, as you would assume. But let's look together at the Health and Welfare Medicaid expansion budget. You'll see from the state fiscal year 23, or SFY 23, to state fiscal year 24, request dollars, the total cost of the program did go up by several $1 million. That's that top number for you. But the general fund request, and that's money that comes from the state of Idaho, that request is slightly lower in 24 than it is for 23. But there are still questions, though. Why did the cost go up if Idaho expects to purge thousands of people from the program?
If I lost 60,000 people on Medicaid expansion, why is the dollar amount higher?
Mr. Chairman, so in the SFY 24 request, we see a reduction in the general fund, but we see an increase in the federal and dedicated. And the federal and dedicated are supporting the upper payment limit payment to hospitals, the supplemental payment to hospitals. Again, it's the difference between what Medicaid paid and what Medicare would have paid. So we're now implementing that payment for the expansion population. Now that we have full years of reimbursement data for hospitals, it will be incorporated, and that is why we see the increase in the budget, even though the number of eligibles will likely decrease in this next year.
So, Sharon, answering that question from Representative Vander Wouda. So, reimbursement money to providers is now revving up now that the expanded Medicaid program is up and running. Now, today in the House Health and Welfare Committee, that concept was detailed by Sharon. It led a few lawmakers to question the review happening right now.
We've implemented Medicaid expansion here in Idaho just a couple of months shy of the start of the pandemic. And so I certainly think that we see some of these costs corresponding with care that has been provided during the pandemic, and then care that had to be deferred because providers were not able to do elective surgeries or some services during the pandemic years. So we have not seen probably what will be normal utilization yet in the program. I think we're still in a period of normalizing, be it the caseload as we work through redeterminations, what utilization will be in the program, and settling in the program. We have seen an increase in the population, and we have seen, as I've mentioned, a higher utilization rate than we projected. That is certainly true, but I do think that we are still in a space of settling in the program as we come out of the pandemic years.
Maybe we should wait a couple more years and review this process and let things more normalize, and then be able to see how this program is benefiting Idahoans, and to make sure that those costs are justifiable at that point.
Sharon was asked a lot of questions about cost, and she did say that if you do consider all the costs and benefits of Medicaid expansion to Idaho's budget specifically, it would cost Idaho more money, about $10 million, to end Medicaid expansion rather than keeping it. Now, a lot of great questions from lawmakers this week, and Health and Welfare is working to get numbers and data and answers to all of those before lawmakers will write their recommendations. And Health and Welfare was asked about how they could cut costs, and there's actually a big report into that which will soon be presented to Idaho lawmakers, Brian. And I do want to say, though, as you heard one of the lawmakers talk about, maybe we should wait a few years to take a look at the review. Well, by law, the state of Idaho, the lawmakers, they have to take a look at it this year, 5 years after it passed in 2018. So they don't have an option. They have to write a recommendation, but the recommendation, it'll depend on what lawmakers think about it. Health and Welfare working this morning in the House, this evening in the Senate. So we'll find out in the coming days really what this looks like. They have till January 31st, the end of the month, to get those recommendations written in. And we're still waiting to hear exactly what those recommendations will look like in terms of if it'll be one letter from a joint Health and Welfare committee or if it'll be individual from the House and Senate.
Okay, so that 2018 law, though, obviously they couldn't have foreseen a pandemic be thrown right in the middle of that 5 years. So I can understand why they say, well, let's wait till normalize a little bit. But the other side of that, it seems like we're going to be getting more federal money to kind of cover that. So it's still a lot of undecided things or a lot of unclear aspects going forward. Right. And, even with the federal money, and if you haven't learned about Medicaid expansion in Idaho, for every dollar that's spent on it, 90 cents essentially comes from the federal government. Right. Idaho will kick in 10 cents per each dollar. The federal funds, though, there are some lawmakers that say, it doesn't really matter if this is federal funds or state funds. We're seeing this program costing more and more than we really thought it was, and we'd like to see the costs driven down. Dave Jepson, who's the director of the Department of Health and Welfare, he was asked by Chairman Vander Wouda, what are some short-term and some long-term things that you could do to cut down on the cost of this? And really, the logical thing is cutting programs and cutting some services. So we'll see if things like, extra dental care could be on the chopping block. Wouldn't that be a direct correlation to how much medical care costs, though? Yeah, and that is also into the equation as we chat about it here on the 208. There's a lot that goes into this, and everything we talked about, even more, is available right now in a great article, ktvb.com. Thanks, Joe. All right, well, expanding Medicaid is one thing, but expanding your footprints throughout the state of Idaho, that's another. Shoshone-Bannock Tribe is trying to branch out westward for more economic opportunity. In 2020, the tribe bought 157 acres of land in Elmore County, which is just outside Mountain Home. Their ultimate plan is to build a casino. And the tribe says it would create more than 1,000 jobs and bring in $187 million for the local economy. And to get the locals to buy in, an ante, if you will, the Shoshone-Bannock Tribe is listening to what the community needs. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Some are quick to call it a bedroom community.
It's cheaper and it really isn't a bad commute. So I think it's a nice community and people like it, yeah.
To Joshua Milan,
well, yeah, I kind of married into it.
Mountain Home has been home for 5 years. But despite the rapid growth,
if we go up the road here, we've got the little gymnastics place. We've got, like a couple activity places.
The town has fewer options to take the family out today than it did when he moved here. Within a few years, Mountain Home lost its bowling alley and movie theater. It's sad for us, though, if you have little kids like we do. That's a bit of a journey to get up to Boise and to make a trip if you want to just go see the movies. But soon Boiseans might be coming to Mountain Home for some entertainment because the Shoshone-Bannock Tribe says they have a solution. They want to bring a movie theater, a bowling alley on top of a casino right here off I-84.
But getting a buy-in on any project is the key from your community.
Alonzo Kobe is the tribe's director of planning.
Have open houses, be transparent to the community because they had a lot of questions about the water issues, the transportation issues, getting into the site.
The tribe estimates the project will create $187 million annually for the local community. The casino in total will employ 1,200 people. To ease community concerns on growth, Shoshone Tribe's leadership is hosting an open house to answer questions.
It's exciting. we just hope and pray that it all goes through, because it's not only going to be good for the Shoshone-Bannock Tribes, but also the community here in Elmore County and the city of Mountain Home.
However, people in the city of Mountain Home have concerns too.
Because it is kind of a tricky place in terms of water rights.
The tribes say the exact water demands are unclear. However, the city of Mountain Home has confirmed to the tribes existing water rights and capacity are already in place. It's providing answers to these frequently asked questions that's garnering support from locals.
It's enlightened me by being able to talk to them about all the different things that they're going to offer.
Revenue from the casino will go back into the Fort Hall Reservation in eastern Idaho.
We have a lot of unmet needs on the reservation. You know, we have the beautiful facility now, the Fort Hall Casino, but that's kind of flatlined as far as revenue generating. We have a lot of the infrastructure upgrades that we need done.
That's the same area Joshua grew up.
The Fort Hall, you know, having a casino there never had any spillover of any ill effects to our community. You know, it was just kind of a venue.
And a similar venue here now has Joshua's support.
I don't really mind this development any more than any other.
Because this development listened to community needs.
Lost the bowling alley this past year, and I think the theater a year or two ago, something like that, yeah.
And locals like the answer.
We would love to have more of that kind of localized here, I think.
Housing and traffic congestion are two other large concerns we heard that people have, and the project public relations manager says they're considering on-site housing for employees as an option, but the impacts of traffic won't fully be known until that environmental study is completed. And the tribes expect that environmental study, Brian, to take about 6 months, and then construction would then take about 2 years after that. I think 18 to 24 months was their expectation. So nothing's set in stone yet. That environmental study still needs to go through. This whole project still needs to be green-lighted, but the proper dominoes are starting to fall to make this a possibility.
I didn't realize they lost their bowling alley and their movie theater in Mountain Home. So yeah, that's something to return those and a casino, jobs, money.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like 14 years old living in Mountain Home, you don't have a movie theater, you don't have a casino. You don't have a casino, excuse me. You don't have a bowling alley, whatever, you get the point.
The cosmic bowling, I know what you're thinking. Yeah,
there you go,
exactly.
appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Andrew. The skyline of downtown Boise may have looked a little differently today if it wasn't for an overnight fire in the late 80s. We look back at the historic Eastman building, which was still smoldering 36 years ago today. You got any hot takes? This is the time to light up our inbox. What'd he say? Yep, that's right. We want your comments, your questions, and even your complaints, as long as they're clean, clever, and concise. Text them to us, 208-321-5614. Include your name and the hashtag #the208, and cool your heels a bit till the end of the show. We might share yours with the rest of the 208. All right, trivia time. Name Idaho's tallest building. For the last nearly 10 years, it's been the Zions Bank building in downtown Boise, sitting on the corner of 8th and Main. And if you've been around these parts for at least that long, you know that corner has some history to it, and not all of it good. For more than 2 decades, it was an empty eyesore for the city of Boise, a blemish that began just after midnight on this day 36 years ago. It had stood on the corner of 8th and Main since 1905. Designed by Tortolet and Company, the same architects of the state capitol, the Overland was first built as a 4-story office building, a nod to 19th century Italian architecture, complete with terracotta cornices and clay lion heads. By 1910, another 2 levels were added, and the 6-story structure became the Eastman in 1927. Nearly 5 decades later, the city of Boise bought the building under its urban renewal plan in 1972, which is why the Eastman sat empty for another 15 years, often offering refuge to the city's homeless. It was then, in the early morning hours of January 24, 1987, when Boise Fire Department responded to a report of smoke coming out of the building.
There was no chance of saving the building. When firefighters arrived on the scene, flames were already eating away at the building on 4 different floors. The heat was causing windows to explode, shattering glass on those below. More than 100 firefighters showed up to battle the blaze, which destroyed the Eastman building in downtown Boise.
We had an individual on the fire escape in the alley, and that fire escape came down to within about 30 feet of the ground, and we had to take a 35-foot ladder to get him off of there.
This morning, most of the flames are gone, but there's still a lot of smoke. Firemen say most of the floors inside the building have collapsed, and the fire chief is planning on ordering the dousing of the flames to stop. Otherwise, the building will turn into a big ice cube.
And by the light of the next day, the downtown landscape had changed.
The Eastman building is dangerously close to collapse. Spot fires are still flaring up here and there, but firefighters have stopped dousing the structure with fire hoses. The water is turning this building into a giant ice cube, making the rubble even more hazardous. In a heartbreaking decision, the City Council and BRA have given the fire department permission to demolish the structure. Developer Larry Leisure, who was going to renovate the building, says preserving even just the facade is now out of the question.
But I think everyone now feels that because of the very precarious nature of those 2 walls that are remaining, it would be very difficult to do so, and it's frankly right now quite dangerous.
There is one part that might be salvageable, these terracotta cornices. The clay lions' heads are very rare, and losing them would be tragic, according to historian Arthur Hart.
They have enormous dollar value as well as aesthetic and historic value. So they're certainly worth saving if we can do it without risking human life.
The Eastman building, standing here since 1905, was on the National Register of Historic Places. Once a historic landmark in Boise, it is now just a dangerous, crumbling old building. And though this is a terrible loss for Boise, BRA members insist the fire will not delay other redevelopment projects downtown.
They insisted. The Eastman building burned for more than a day, and as many of you know, that corner, that lot specifically, became renowned for redevelopment delays. It was first destined to be demolished in 1978 to make room for a downtown mall. But those plans were pushed south, which we now know as Bodo, but was then called the 8th Street Marketplace. Ownership of 8th and Main would change hands several times since that day, and that corner soon became known as the Hole after one developer tried to build on it but stopped after digging it out and leaving it with a hole and exposed rebar. Then in 2011, the Gardner Company bought it and made it into Idaho's tallest 17-story Zions Bank building, the one we know as downtown today. Eastman's Lions heads, by the way, that they were hoping to save, they all broke when that building collapsed. But there is one on display inside the Zions Bank building lobby today. And there's also there was an arch that was there. The Eastman Arch, the doorway there, that was also salvaged, and that's sitting in Pioneer Park on Grove Street in downtown Boise. One of the 2 men that you heard mentioned by the fire chief there, who had to be rescued from the building the night of the fire, one of those men ended up being charged with second-degree arson a few weeks later.
Not a rare thing to have a spectacular sunrise or sunset around the Gem State, and we may get another one tonight. Beautiful sunset. Underneath this mainly dry and colder than average flow from the northwest aloft, it is pumping in enough moisture from time to time to increase the cloud cover, and there were some stubborn low clouds that just hung out through the Camas Prairie, Big and Little Wood River. That's a mouthful there. That has kept temperatures quite cold right through the central part of the state. High pressure ridge is ultimately in control for us, and that's keeping us underneath that northwesterly flow aloft. So not much happening in the next couple of days. I think that's the moral of the story here. Won't be as cold into early tomorrow morning as it was this morning or yesterday morning because of the cloud cover that will increase into the overnight hours. So probably around 20 degrees for a low in Boise tomorrow. Could be some upper teens, and then eventually we'll see highs in the mid to maybe the upper 30s tomorrow afternoon, much like where we were today or where we're sitting right now. 38 degrees for a high in Ontario and Caldwell, 37 in Boise tomorrow. A little cooler through Mountain Home and cooler yet down through the Magic Valley tomorrow. Looking ahead, I mentioned not much happening Wednesday into Thursday. It's late Friday that we start to see those chances for any rain snow mix. Even snow down to the valley floor is increasing for us, and that continues to increase the chance, Saturday into Sunday and even more likely into Monday, with a disturbance dropping through the region and pulling down some very cold Arctic air as well. So the cold gets even colder into the beginning of next week. Weekend snow looking likely, more likely Sunday into Monday. So I have put the first alert weather banner on Monday because we can't really nail down how much snow we'll be seeing, but it's possible we will be shoveling in the Treasure Valley Sunday into Monday. It's possible. This is the snow potential that you're looking at taking us out through about the 2nd or 3rd of February. So winter carrying on with cold temperatures and our chances for snow increasing across the region. Here's a look at the 7-day forecast, which of course you can also always find at ktvb.com.
All right, final minute or so of this Tuesday show. Let's get to your comments you sent in during today's show, like this one from Jill in Boise. Amazing how when the state complains about medical costs going up, they don't discuss making medical care more affordable. Having more people uninsured will not fix that problem, says Jill in Boise, which is kind of one of the point we talked about. Like, costs keep going up because I assume medical costs, part of that, keep going up as well. On the Medicaid expansion, you talk about the cost. What is that cost per person per year? Ask Gary Mayfield. Well, I asked Joe that question, and he kind of sent me some numbers during the break. He says if we are spending $68 million for 145,000 people, that would be about $468 per person in Idaho that is covered by Medicaid expansion. If that math is correct, that's what we're spending per year. Now, not knowing what that will be going forward based on the recommendations and the questions and answers that are going on right now at the State House, but right now it's about that, a little less than $500 per person. How can the tribe build a casino on non-reservation land, asked Rhonda. And this is a question that we had earlier when the tribe actually bought that land a few years ago. We tried to get an answer to that question, but as it stands right now, from what we understand, they bought that land, therefore they own it. They're a sovereign nation, and they can kind of do what they wish with it as it stands, right? So if they want to build a casino on land they own, they have that right to do that. So that's how we would assume that that happens. I know somebody complained earlier that we spend more time asking for questions and comments than we do spending time reading these questions and comments. You should see some of these questions and comments that we do get. You'd understand why. We'll see you tomorrow.